One of them kicked my legs out from under me, knocking me to the ground. And there were three of them. Two of them beat me while the third watched on. He kicked my hip like through my rib cage. They just kept coming at me, punching me in the face, beating my head, kicking me, jumping up and down on my rib cage. It was just outrageous. And it was really painful. They were really hurting me. Then I lifted up and I went up. And as that started happening, the pain stopped. I didn't feel any pain anymore. And I lifted off.
The A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
I'm here with Leigh Grode. She had an amazing, a very extraordinary near-death experience back in 1991. Hello, Leigh. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, AJ.
You had this experience when you were studying in Europe. What happened that day?
I was a student at the Universiteit van Amsterdam and the Nederlands Film and Television Academy. I was preparing to do my film, and I had been doing research. And that night, I was at my teacher's house, and we were going over all the research information. And I was going to meet my girlfriend at the time, but I was late. And so I left France's house and I walked to the phone booth in the old west part of Amsterdam. And I went into, I dialed my number and I was leaving a message when all of a sudden these two hands covered my eyes, and they were gruff and big. And I was like, oh, peekaboo. Wait a second. I'm in Amsterdam. There's nobody here that would play peekaboo with me. And so I elbowed the guy, and he lost his grip. And then there were two sets of hands on me, and they were pulling me out of the phone booth. And I had never been attacked like this before. It was all very new. And I think at first they thought I was a man. I had very short hair in those days, and I was wearing a wool coat, cold, and a fedora. And when they grabbed me, I yelped, and they realized I was a woman, and it became a gay bashing, if you will. And one of them kicked my legs out from under me, knocking me to the ground. And there were three of them. Two of them beat me while the third watched on. And he kicked my hip like through my rib cage. And then someone jumped on my chest and started beating my head into the cement. And I don't know how many times. It was like a lot. I had never had an experience with a stranger like this, or multiple strangers at one time. And I was terrified. I didn't have a chance to think about death, to tell you the truth. I was just trying to squirm my way out of the situation, and I couldn't. And it was the first time in all my years that I couldn't fight for myself. I couldn't physically overpower them or stop them or anything. They just kept coming at me, and it was really painful because they were really hurting me. This wasn't just like a slap in the face. They were doing physically serious harm to my body, and all I could think about is my body, the pain, and that how much can I take? That's what my thought process was. I didn't think of God. I didn't think of anything like that. I was totally in the moment. And I was like, what is going on here? And I couldn't see the next moment. I was only in that moment. It was as if I was in this place. It wasn't a tube, it wasn't a tunnel, but just like locked into this moment, this physical loca, this space that I was in, laying on the ground, on the cement. And I looked around, and there were some people walking their dogs, and they did nothing. And I felt an extreme sense of loneliness, and I had no idea what was going to happen. I couldn't do anything. I was just screaming, and I wasn't saying words. I was just screaming. I was emoting sound and loudly, and he was punching me in the face, beating my head, kicking me, jumping up and down on my rib cage. It was just outrageous. Okay, so then I sat up, and it was like I started, like literally, like, you're getting out of bed. I felt like I sat up, and and I lifted up. And as that started happening, the pain stopped. I didn't feel any pain anymore. And I lifted off and I went up. I went into the space that was complete darkness. There was no light there. And, but it was this other kind of texture and this other feeling, it was another worldly feeling. And I kept rising up and out, and I was like, wow, this is really, it felt like the most maternal, loving, womanly energy. And it just engulfed me, and it was like holding me and loving me. And then this voice spoke to me, and it was a male voice. And that voice said, go back in your body. And I still had my personality. You know, I didn't have my body, but I had some of my personality. He said, what the F? They're beating the crap out of me down there. I don't want to go back there. And the response was silence. Not just like, but it's a deafening silence. And in that moment, I realized it was like, uh-oh. I don't know how to navigate the space I'm in. I don't know how to communicate in this space. I don't know what this space is. But again, it was still this loving energy. And then I don't know how much, what we would call time, but the voice came again and said, go back in your body. And so I aligned with the thought of yes. And I got sucked back to earth, like the quickest elevator you ever went on. But while I was there, it was not like I didn't need eyes to see, because there was really nothing to see in that way, in that moment, for me anyway. And I call it pea soup, because it was like this dense, thick, gooey stuff. And it was, I guess, like I was just floating there. I was just there. And it just came around me, and it came to me, and it just went everywhere, like in me and out of me. And, you know, and it was just very calming and very just present. And then again, when the voice spoke to me, I said yes in my mind's eye, if you will, not having a body. And I just got like came back. And as I ascended back into my flesh, my body must have bounced off the ground because they jumped back. And I had this attaché case that had all my research information, everything I needed was in that attaché case. And it was this like purple snakeskin attaché case. It was like one of a kind. And they took off with it. And it didn't matter that what I just went through. My focus became single-minded. And all I kept thinking about was that this was January 3rd, 1991. And I was supposed to start shooting my final film on February 8th, 1991. And I was not going to let anything stop me from making my film. And I was so focused on that. That was my focus on when I came back in. And I got myself up, and I just dragged my right leg with me, and I walked back to my teacher's house. And he said, what happened? I said, never mind that. They stole my attaché case. He said, Leigh, you have to go to the police. Leigh, you have to go to the Zika house, to the hospital. I said, no, I need to go find my film. And they walked with me and I'm walking blocks with all these broken bones. And I come down, and there's a small canal, and I walk down, and there comes one of the boys who were involved in the attack. And he was jumping on his bicycle. And I went up to him and I said, I want my attaché case back. I want everything in it intact. It better not wind up in a canal, because I know where you live and I'll come back and I'm going to kill you. I'm not going to half kill you. I'm going to really kill you. And I'm going to find your friends, and I'm going to kill them too. And I said it in Dutch, and I said it in English. And that kid got on that bicycle and took off. And I collapsed. Franz and his wife got me up, and we went first to the police. I was out of my mind. I was not able to fit in my body so good. My spirit was just unable to stay present in my physical form. It was just, I was in agony. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand. I was just in agony. And all of a sudden my lover showed up, and she was like, oh my God. And I said, how'd you know? And the entire attack was recorded on the phone call that I had made to her to tell her I was going to be late. The entire attack was recorded there. She heard it. She heard me screaming. She heard the thumps. She heard it all. And then I just collapsed again. I just passed out again from the pain. So they took me to the hospital, and I had damage, but it was nothing like imminent that was going to kill me. Like they checked my skull, and yes, I had a concussion, but my skull was not broken. It's really grace that my body got to heal, because that was a horrible attack. And they wanted to keep me overnight, and I begged them to let me go home and sleep in my own bed and not be, but I didn't get out of the hospital until the next morning anyway, because they kept me there for observation. So what would happen, I would have a hard time functioning. I went blind for 2 weeks. I couldn't see. I was on a deadline, and I had to submit all these forms and papers to my teacher. And all my friends from school, from the television academy, and from the 12-step programs I was a member of and am a member of came, and they did everything for me. Somebody drew my storyboard, and I just spoke it out, and I was able to submit the storyboard, and I did it. I got it all done on time, and I still was wearing a body brace around my torso. So after doing the work to try and make all my deadlines, I get a phone call from the police, and they say, Leigh Grode? I said, yes. We have found your, how did they say, purple slong. That's how you say snake in Dutch, skull, and everything's inside of it. So one of my friends went to pick it up and brought it to me, and everything was in there. And what it was to me, it was just hope, it wasn't just hope. It was my will to live that was pushing through. And it had to focus on something tangible. Like for me, in those days, things had to be tangible. I needed to know what my end result would be. And that was just about the station I was at that time in my life. I mean, we're talking 30 some odd years ago. I was much younger at that time. And I was evolving. So when we went to make the first shots on the film, the first in the shots, it was in the old Jewish theater, and it was what was left after the war, was where I started the film. But then the recreation of the women's cabaret was, there was a scene there that I had to shoot in reverse because I had this body brace still on me. And the body was because of my ribs were all smashed in. And in Holland, in America, we do chiropractics different than they do in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, my bones had to heal before they could be put back in place. So that's why I had the body brace on. They wanted me to keep it on longer, but I needed to take it off to be able to bend my knee. So I shot this scene in reverse so that I could get down. When I took the brace off, I could be down on my knee and then get back up and put the brace back on. But So but it's like the film is called Outcast, and it's actually on YouTube. It's a short film, but it's broken up into 3 parts. And if you listen to my voice, you can hear the trauma still in my voice from the event that had happened a month before.
I always wondered why people hate other peoples. Why do certain people want to eliminate a whole breed of people? They don't even know me, and they hate me just because I'm Jewish. My grandparents, along with my great-grandmother, did teach me that I was free, that it was my right as a human being to learn to be true to myself and to be kind to others.
When you came back, did you share your experience with someone, your close friends, your partner? What was their reaction?
Well, Jackie had heard the attack, but I didn't tell her what happened. It was like, how do you explain that you were told to come back in your body? How do you explain that it's bigger than our flesh, that our existence is bigger than our flesh? I didn't even understand really fully where I was and what was going on. It changed me. It changed me. It changed me spiritually, but I wouldn't understand that. It changed me physically. It changed me emotionally. It changed me in the world and how I presented myself. And that a bit of my youth, my arrogance of my youth was taken away. I used to feel like I was invincible. And what happened that night was I felt like the S, like Superman S, was ripped off my chest. And that I was vulnerable. And I had never experienced a vulnerability, physically speaking, like that since I was a young kid. But I never felt it. I felt it at home with my parents, but I didn't feel it with the public. I didn't feel it out there in the world. Out there in the world, I was strong. Out there in the world, I could fight. Out there in the world, I wouldn't take anything from anybody. I would let you know who I am and really make sure you understood that you were about to get yourself in a heck of a lot of pain. And all of a sudden that was gone. That, like, I didn't believe I could fight for myself anymore. I walked with a cane. And after I healed and I had my bones literally malleted back into place, I still walked with the cane because I needed protection. I needed a weapon. So that in case anybody came up to me, I had a weapon. And I came back to America with that cane because it was still something that really, I just know one minute I'm here, next minute I'm there, then that would grow over the years. Actually, I wouldn't understand my near-death experience until I returned to America. And a lot changed in 5 years from when I left America. I used to live in San Francisco, and now I live in Los Angeles. And I was living with who is now my wife, my girlfriend at the time. And I put on this show that I had never seen. Mind you, I was away. So it was Oprah Winfrey. And she was talking to James Van Praagh, a renowned medium. And he was talking about all these different experiences. And all of a sudden, I sat up and all the memories came back. So from the time that I stayed focused on the film and I got the film done, and then I came back to America, then like almost a year and a half, 2 years later, I would finally get clarity. And I felt like if I told anybody, they would think I was crazy.
So when you saw the Oprah Winfrey show, you did not remember, or you had no knowledge of your NDE?
Right.
Or you vaguely remembered it, or what?
No, it stopped. It's like I had no memory of that. I just had a memory of the attack. I only remembered the attack. That really was a trigger for me. So it really took my focus. It was a big distraction because I wasn't ready to deal with the NDE yet. So, and which is how I see it today. I didn't realize it in the moment, but that I had to do, before I was prepared, I believe now, looking back in retrospect, that there was work I needed to do on Leigh, before Leigh could be able to really explore the fact that I always believe there's more life than death after death. I didn't believe when the body failed, that was it. I never believed that. And that's because I helped so many people die over the years. And because of AIDS here in America and being gay and just people dropping dead and the government not caring, not willing to help. So it became something I did, not because I'll go help them, but it was people I cared about and I loved, and I didn't want them to die alone. And here were these guys that were once like 280 pounds. They were 80 pounds, and that they wouldn't let people die in the hospital, and so they had to go home, and they couldn't be alone. So I got very involved in that. So I did have a sense of continuity of otherworldly. I did always hear voices and people did come back to me, and I have had those experiences, but I just pushed them away. I just kept pushing them away.
So what happened when you were watching this Oprah Winfrey show?
I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I actually I didn't think it was a near-death experience, okay? I thought I died, and I got sent back here. It was like, I died, period. I transitioned up. I had this experience. It wasn't my time or whatever. I was told to come back. I said, no, I don't want to come back. I argued. I got the silent treatment. And then I was asked again to return, and it wasn't a judgy voice. It was very loving. It was matter of fact. That was the other part of the other side. Things weren't like trying to talk you into anything. You were told something or given information, and what you did with it was your responsibility. You were a separate entity in that level. And so I was told to go back in my body, and I was arguing personality. The higher frequency doesn't deal with personality. Higher frequency deals with truth. So when I was asked again and I aligned with that, I got sucked back to earth. When I was sitting on the couch watching Oprah, listening to James talk, everything fell into place. I remembered the conversation I had. I remembered the refusal to come back in. I remembered all of that. Like tactile, it was like a tactile experience. I literally felt it. A cellular body memory came over me. And so I was like, okay, I need to find out more about this. I'm open to this idea. And then I started getting information. So that really was spaced out because this was, I believe, because this is a big part of my life. And I had to be ready to receive and believe and to stay present in this part of my life. And I needed to do some work. And I am in recovery, and I needed to do some work. And I did. I did my work. I do my work. I still do my work. You know, and more became revealed, more opened up. I opened up more. People would show up in my life at different points. When my grandmother, like I had an intuitive telepathic interaction with my grandmother, God rest her soul, back. I got clean in 85. This was in 87. And I knew it was my grandmother. I knew something was going on, and I knew she was dying, and I didn't question it. And I called my brother, who was living in LA. I was in San Francisco, and I said, Grandma's dying. We need to get back to New York. And he said, can you get to LA? And I said, yes. And I got to LA, and we flew back. This is before cell phones. This is before pagers and internet and all this. And we were calling the home line the whole time. And then we landed in New York, and my brother called my grandmother's house again, and my aunt answered. And he told him we were there and we were on our way, which hospital should we go to? And for the next 3 days, I would spend with my grandmother telepathically communicating. My whole family did not get me. They still don't, but that's okay. I don't need them to get me. But what happened was we walked through that together. And she did try to kill herself. She had leukemia and all these other horribly painful diseases, and she had had enough. And the last thing she told me, she said, "It's time for you to get a cat again." I said, "Grandma, you're laying here getting ready to leave, and you're telling me to get a cat?" She said, "Get the cat." I said, "Okay, I'll get a cat." And when I got back to San Francisco, I had a voicemail on my phone. A friend of mine's cat gave birth to kittens, and that there was one that she knew was for me. And so I got the cat, and I named it Fagel. Fagel is my grandmother's Jewish name, and it means little bird. So I named my cat Little Bird after my grandmother. And there are all kinds of, people would call them coincidences. I call them alignments. I call them connections. I call them higher frequencies, that when we're able to communicate really clearly and specifically with someone else, we have these abilities. So, and I actually brought it into a teaching what I do with clients called soul-to-soul communication.
Since then, you have become a channeler, and also you have had other mystical experiences, right?
Yes. In 1977, I started falling in love with girls. I had a lot of men friends and a lot of boyfriends, and I loved them. I still love them. There's some of them are still alive and still in my life, but it wasn't the way I was made to be in this lifetime. And I really didn't fit into society that way. And it was a great heartache for me. And so I was going to commit suicide. And I had a plan, and I had a rope, and I stashed it in the bushes on the overpass of a expressway in New York. And then I had this intuitive thought that said, try calling the hotline one more time. And if you don't like it, you can come back and you can carry out this task. And so I went home, and that night I called the suicide hotline, and they told me about this free drug program that I could do all the therapy I need. So I called them the next day, and they took me in for an intake, and I got into the program, and it was a tough choice to do. Anyway, long story short, my issue was falling in love with girls. In that time period, I got pregnant twice. I had 2 abortions. A lot of really dark stuff happened. And then finally, one of the girls kissed me. We had to tell the higher ups what happened, and they said, "Well, we'll just sweep it under the rug, just curiosity." I was like, "Okay." Well, that summer, the girls sponsor, big sister, we used to call it in the program. She was my best friend, and she was pissed at me. Wouldn't talk to me. We're going on summer vacation, and she's not talking. And one day, she calls me on the phone. She says, "I think you should come over and we should talk." I was happier than anything. And when I go over, and she starts trying to seduce me. And I'm like, I just went through this whole thing. I can't do this. And she kept laying it on thicker and thicker. And I really didn't want to say no anyway. I did want to. And so for the first time in my life, I made love with a woman or a girl. We were girls. And for the first time, I felt normal. I felt sane. Everything fell into place. I was normal. I felt like, whoa, this is what it is about. And all hell broke loose when we returned to the program. And they did this thing with, it's called an inclusion, exclusion encounter. And you have to beg for forgiveness. And we had a general meeting where all the groups come together once a week. And in that group that usually lasts an hour, lasted 4 hours. They had me get a doll. They had me beg for forgiveness. All the men could scream anything they wanted at me. All the women had to turn their back and not make eye contact with me so I wouldn't seduce them with my gaze. Anyway, this went on for 7 hours. And then finally it broke up into a smaller group and they wanted to continue, and I sat on the floor and I didn't get up. And they said, "Why aren't you getting up?" And I said, "There's nothing left for me here. There's no need for me to get up. If this is what you're telling me, it's wrong. It's not wrong." So I left and I came back, and then I came back. And that's when I had to read the Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh. And I had to read these certain prayers every day. I had to get a box, and I had to get a doll, and I had to bury the doll, and I had to represent my lesbian part of myself. And I had to say Kaddish for myself. You never say Kaddish for yourself. And I had to say other prayers. And I had to read all these segments of the Bible about anti-homosexual stuff. And while I was saying the prayers one evening, that's when all of a sudden this warm, bright light forms behind me. I'm sitting here, he comes from back there, and he moves forward, and I turn, and it's Jesus. And I'm like, I'm Jewish. Why is Jesus coming to me? And I turned to him, and he has his arms extended, and he's like moving forward. He wasn't walking. He was like floating forward. And I was like, wow, I think I'm losing my mind. I really think it. I ran out the door, and I ran down the stairs, and I ran down the street. And I went to my friend Paul, which I didn't know about Paul. But Paul, my friend, was a born-again Christian. And I said, "Paul, I need your help." He said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "You look really scared." I said, "I'm really shaken up right now. I need a Bible, and I need you to take me to your church where people believe. I need to go there, and I need to go there as soon as possible." So we went to the church. And again, I'm Jewish. We don't do these things. And this woman starts talking in tongues and, the gibberish sound. And then this other woman starts, "I'll testify, I'll testify, I'll testify." And I'm like, he just put his hand on my knee and just said, "Breathe." And she started to say everything that happened to me in that room with Jesus and explained it to the T. I said, "We have to get out of here." He goes, "Is that what happened?" I said, "Come on, we got to go." He said, "Leigh, you're very special." I said, "Right now, I'm really shook. I don't know how special I am. I just know that something's happening and I didn't create it and I don't know how to deal with it." And we left. They wanted to baptize me. I said, "No, sorry. I'll take a bath tonight, but I don't need to be baptized." And they called me from the program, and they wanted me to come back. And I said, well, I called my friends who were supporting me, really supporting me, and I went and I closed the program. I went back and I closed the program. I went to the city council and I had their funding revoked. And then what wound up happening is my story got documented and was presented to Congress as a violation of civil liberties. And I said, "Well, tell me what that means." And the woman said, "Well, Leigh, lesbians have civil rights." I said, "Whoa, what did you say I am?" She said, "Lesbian." I said, "I'm a lesbian?" I didn't even know. It was just a body-heart experience. And that, that was like So I've had this fond connection. And when that energy I experienced with Jesus coming up from behind me was very much the same energetic field that I experienced in my near-death experience. And that is profound.
Can you tell us about how you started channeling, and also can you tell us about your guide, Sebastian?
Sure. So, the second major loss in my life happened in 2015 when my father passed away. And we two telecommunicated, and I helped him in his transition out and all that. In 2016, they found a tumor in my head. And I had to have a surgery. And it was a 10.5-hour surgery. And so what happened was I was diagnosed in August, but I wouldn't have the surgery until, well, actually it wound up being the first week in November. And it was the day before Election Day. And I had to practice, well, I didn't have to. I chose to practice not knowing what was going on, knowing I had a tumor, didn't know what it was until they told me something tangible. It didn't exist. And I really practiced this. I really became an ability for me to say, I don't know that. I don't know that. That doesn't exist yet. If it's tangible, it exists. If it's not tangible, it doesn't exist in terms of the physical form. Go through this surgery, changed my life. I was never the same, really, in the best of ways. But the first thing that happened after the surgery was that I couldn't breathe on my own. And so I wake up, and my wife's standing there screaming, "Breathe, Leigh, breathe, breathe." And I was like, I can't. And I really couldn't. And so I closed my eyes and I said, okay, if this is my time, take me. And if it's not, help me. And they took care of my oxygen. They raised it. They got me breathing again. I was fine. Then as I'm recovering, I hear, okay, it's time for you to knock this bakery nonsense off. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. You need to start doing what you need to do. That's what I was told. And I've always had a guiding voice, by the way. I have always had a guiding voice since I was a wee little kid. And I've had many experiences of awe. And that's what really set me on this parallel. And so I said, okay. So I was getting over the surgery and not doing very much. And then we went to this, my wife's a performance artist, and we went to the gallery for a holiday party. And it was my first time out around people. And I had the bandages were off. I was wearing a hat, couldn't see my scars, whatever. So there's this woman there who I've known on and off for many years, and she's an artist and all this stuff. And she says, I'm not doing any art right now. I said, oh, really? What are you doing? She goes, I'm channeling. And I went, you're what? I'm channeling. I said, I want to do that. I do that, but I want to do that. I want to be able to gather all these pieces together. And so she gave me the number of this woman, Sean Randall, who became my teacher, my mentor in this area. And she led me to the place of learning how to open up and relax through meditation. And sure enough, it's 9 years that I've been doing this. And my guide's name is Sebastian. He and I do not sound alike. He has a brogue. I don't. And he's a very wise being. He's a very wise being. And we have been together for lifetimes. We sat at the feet of many great masters. And I've sat at the feet of great masters in this life too, which is also part of the grace of this journey I've been on. So with Sebastian, I do a thing called voice channeling. And what it is I go into a trance, a meditative state. Initially, it's a light meditation, but as he comes forward, I go back And he has access to his knowledge, my words, whatever, my body to express what he needs to express. And I always feel great afterwards. And he is very kind, but very direct. And if people are messing about, and he'll just say, that's not what I'm here for. What is really on your heart, And so it's helped me grow exponentially. And being a member of different communities, one being the vocal channeling community, I'm a medium, I speak to discarnates. I do once a month on Wednesdays, I get together with a group of folks and we bring consciousness forward to help discarnates who are stuck. We were very busy during COVID here because a lot of people died and didn't understand why they died, and were stuck on this plane and needed to transcend to be able to go on their journey. And I particularly like to deal with people who committed suicide because there are pieces missing, and it's grace to help them figure it out so that they don't have to, they have to finish their karma from this lifetime and other lifetimes, but that maybe they don't have to repeat it in the next lifetime. And I also do a lot of, I work with sound bowls and crystal sound bowls, and I do these washes where I also go into a trance doing it. And with the harmony and the frequencies, I'm able to move different things out of and through people, and I'm guided which bowl with which backup, and it goes on like that. And I love it, and I'm doing more and more of that. And I think that a lot of the healing modalities that are very extreme can eventually be replaced by other modalities that aren't as extreme. I think the new technology that's coming up, but I feel like working with frequencies is really the modality that will support every other modality in healing. So I've been really focused on that. So I think that it's an exciting time that way. It's also a time of much unrest with many people, but it's a choice. It's a choice.
What would you tell someone who is about to die or recently lost a loved one?
I would say you're on a journey, and it is your body that's failing. It is not your soul. And you have some more learning to do about how to be a soul. And it's as exciting, as enjoyable as you allow yourself to have. But there's grace and abundant love that is non-human, that is so far superior in energetic fields that you can create and do. You don't stop creating. You don't stop loving. And you'll meet and be with your like-minded souls again and again and again. And for those of you who are losing someone, their time is coming to a fold. And now you need to take all this energy that you have dedicated to the care of your loved one and slowly and surely bring it back to yourselves. And that grief is not a sentence. It's an energetic field that will cleanse you in a way you can't even imagine. If you live near the ocean, put your feet in the water. Calm down. Cry as much as you need to cry. Scream as much as you need to scream, and let someone hold you. Don't do it alone.
How can people contact you if they're interested in communicating with you or in having a session?
You can go to my website, leighgrode.com. And I think I'm going to start putting a calendar on there so people can schedule times. Because I think the need is really strong. I really am looking for opportunities to do group teachings, group healings, because when we're in a group, and not that I'm anti one-on-one, because I'm really not, but when we're in a group, we create a vortex, and that vortex reinforces any work that an individual could do or does do, and it just amps it up to a higher level. So if you have any needs like that, please contact me and we can discuss that. You could go through my website and I will get the message and respond.
Hi, I'm Janet Riley, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And I am thrilled to invite you to join us at our annual conference, August 27th to the 31st in Oak Brook, Illinois, just outside Chicago, where we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the field of near-death studies. Join us for 4 inspiring days with more than 100 speakers, including the legendary Life After Life author Raymond Moody, University of Virginia Professor Emeritus Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell of the Telepathy tapes, the psychic lawyer Mark Anthony, and spiritual teacher Carolyn Mace, among others. You'll experience healing workshops, including meditation, Reiki, spiritual counseling, and our beloved bookstore with exclusive book signings, surrounded by others who share your interests and your experiences. Come make friends and become part of a warm, caring community that will beckon you to return. Every year, we welcome nearly 1,000 attendees and serve over 20,000 globally through educational resources and support groups. This warm, deeply connected community celebrates life and the life that follows. For nearly 50 years, IANS has represented researchers who study near-death experiences and supported those who have had near-death experiences and experienced related phenomena. Our mission is to educate the world. Our hope is that by supporting research and people, and by communicating far and wide to reporters, podcasters, and through our website and social media, we can normalize discussions about death and the afterlife and help answer the very important question: what happens when we die? Our planet faces unprecedented challenges, and our conference offers a place to recharge, to be informed, to be healed and inspired. Register now at ians.org, that's IANDS.org, and become part of a gathering that informs, heals, and inspires. We hope to see you there.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.